there are Flintlocks, and then there are Snaphaunces. So what's the difference between a Flintlock and a Snaphaunce? And it has to do with how the sears are loaded. On a Flintlock, the sear is loaded in compression, whereas on a Snaphaunce, the sear is loaded in shear. So when you drop this hammer, you pull that back, and then the sear rides out. So let me show you what that looks like in slow-mo. This part here wants to go through that hole and grab this surface. So because that surface is on a slant, there is a resultant force that's trying to rotate this sear component this way. So when this thing cocks, we'll cock it, but it will not be allowed to rotate back because the tail will catch underneath. And you'll see right here, bang. So you see how the tail snapped out? Now, if we don't support it, it'll ride right back down. But if we do support it, the cock will stay cocked. This drive rod right here hooks to the pan cover. So I'm going to do a very light pan here. We're going to roll over. And we're going to look at this pan cover here. And you'll see that this pan cover is driven by this rod. And the pan, the end of that rod sticks out right there. So let me relight here. Aha, there you go. There's the end of that rod that sticks out. Okay? So when this thing rides forward, that rod is driven in, and there's some material that's been removed here that I have to put back. But basically you can see it driving the pan cover open. In a Flintlock, that same evolution, give me a little bit of an uptight on the focus here. Thank you. That same evolution, the pan cover and the part that makes the sparks is integrated, as opposed to on a Snaphaunce, you cock, you snap it back, and then you bring the frizzen down like that. So the frizzen is independent on a Snaphaunce, and the pan cover is mechanical like it was on the wheel lock that preceded it. So if we kill this, kill that, then we can make some sparks, you see. And the Snaphaunce has it loaded in shear, which is an engineering issue with the materials that were available in the 1500s. So on a Flintlock as we know it, the tumbler surface, which is located here, it's a little bit hidden on this lock, but the tumbler surface looks like this, and here's the part of the tumbler that rotates like this. Okay? And we have a sear nose that engages like so, and then there's a tail sticking out of this thing, and when we push, and the spring here, okay, so when we push up on this, this is going to drop and allow this mainspring to rotate the tumbler. This is loaded in compression. The resultant force when this is trying to rotate is trying to go that way, and the sear is resisting it with a force going in that direction. And this surface gets loaded in compression. Steel can stand compression really well. Steel is noted for it. It can also do tension, but in this particular case, we're loaded in compression. And this was the ultimate extrapolation of the Flintlock. A lot of really percussion revolvers use this exact thing. If you rotate this photograph 90 degrees, that looks a lot like the trigger on a single action army, and this looks an awful lot like the hammer. See what I'm saying? So it's the same force setup, but it's compression and it works rather well. Now, the Snaphaunce is a different story. Several of these locks were done this way, and I'm going to stand this thing up here so that it makes sense. So let's get into a different axis here. The center of rotation of this lock is that black dot right there, okay? This lock, this locking surface right here, this sear surface, the part that's got the that's got the edge on it, is trying to go this way, and our sear is attempting to keep it from going that way. And what it's trying to do is just take the end of the sear and bend it right off the lock in that direction. So it's trying to smear this thing right off the lock, and we don't want it to do that. The ultimate extrapolation to keep this from happening on a horizontal sear is to put a locking surface on the back of this and then have this great big cam that comes in here like this. And this is called a dog lock. And you'll see this on a lot of these older English locks that still have the horizontal sears on them. They just put a huge safety catch on the outside of this thing so that it couldn't go off half cocked. One of the beauties of the Snaphaunce is that it could be carried exactly like this. You could have the pan cover shut, you could lock this thing, and you could have the pan cover closed, and then you could just slide the frizzen out of the way. And you can't do that on a flintlock. You can't do that on a true flintlock. You can't open it up. So you could carry this gun like this, but even 400 years ago, these guys trusted this sear arrangement about as far as they could throw it. And it was transitional engineering. They knew the engineering was off back then. Somebody, probably a watchmaker, came up with something better. So you can see now the difference between the two locks. And I'm building a gun that's made late 1500 or early 1600s, and I'm going to use this 1595 to 1600 Snaphaunce for our project. And this flintlock, though beautiful, is going on something significantly later on in the flintlock spectrum. At the end of the day, the whole idea was to mix sparks and ignite gunpowder. So I put a little bit of, this is 1F. If your lock can't light what's in the barrel, you need to work on your lock a little bit more. But the Snaphaunce had an independent pan that could be closed. The flintlock integrated the pan. The Snaphaunce could be carried safe because its searing arrangement wasn't very, very good. The flintlock had a compression sear. The Snaphaunce had a horizontal sear. So at the end of the day, though, they both work the same way. The flint scrapes steel off of here like a single-stroke milling machine and ignites gunpowder. The same effect, except with a vertical sear on both. And at the end of the day, they both achieved the same thing. This did it with more parts. It was a lot heavier. It's a lot longer. It doesn't make for a compact gun. These things got downright small. Anyway, just a little look into the world as we continue to build this particular gun that lock's going to go on, and that should be pretty cool.